Ben, let's go ahead and get through these introductory slides and we can get started.
All right. Excellent, Frank. Go ahead and take it away.
Fantastic. So before we get to our program, I just want to say a little bit about Public Spend Form. We're a market intelligence platform for public sector buyers and suppliers. What we do is we provide supplier and market knowledge for public procurement. We have best practices frameworks and materials, tools, standards, a lot of information, a rich resource there at publicspendforum.net, and it's all free to access. We also have a global community and network of peers and experts in public procurement. We really enjoy bringing that community together with vibrant discussions and events. So check out publicspendforum.net, where you'll see all these this information. You can register for events and kind of take a look at the content that we provide. I want to talk quickly about a tool that we've recently launched that we're really excited about called GovShop. GovShop is a place to search, find, and connect with suppliers. You can think of it a little bit like a Google and LinkedIn for government contracting. GovShop's free to use. It's browser-based, so you don't have to download any software, buy any licenses. You can get started using GovShop right away to conduct market and supplier research. Just go to govshop.com. We built it specifically for government contracting. So we know what acquisition professionals are doing when they conduct market research. We've built filters within GovShop that can help you filter down large lists of suppliers by socioeconomic distinction, by ownership, by whether or not they're registered with the government or not. It's a really exciting tool, very dynamic. You can use it to create market research reports, export suppliers, market summaries, really awesome. So check it out, govshop.com. We're very excited about it. And suppliers, by the way, if you're out there, you can create your free profile in minutes and start getting found by your ideal government customers. Okay, enough housekeeping today. Ben, let's go to the next slide. I want to thank our sponsors for today and give them a chance. We're joined by Liz Marion of Bunker Labs. Liz, thanks so much for being with us today. Please tell us a little bit about Bunker Labs.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm really excited about GovShop and the Public Spend Forum being a thought partner that is also a resource for our entrepreneurs at Bunker Labs. So Bunker Labs is a national nonprofit that helps the military-connected community start successful businesses. We do that through a robust network, tools and programs that we provide, and resources and partnerships. So our three words that we follow are inspire, equip, and connect. And that's how we help them start successful businesses, veterans, military spouses, as well as the greater military connected community. One of our mantras at Bunker Labs is you'll be what you see. And that's what we mean by inspire. We are a team of mostly also entrepreneurs, and we help our further military connected community throughout the nation start businesses through our own experiences and providing resources and access to partnerships. So also equip, we do that by programs. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our main line of programs, and then connecting each other. We think that peer connections through entrepreneurship is one of the main ways that we can provide those resources, and also pathways to entrepreneurship. There's a lot of different formats of entrepreneurship. Bunker Labs has had a great impact. We're only about 5 years old. We are in 32 cities currently in the United States, 20 states, but we have expansion plans to be in all 50 states in the next 18 months. So there will be a Bunker Labs chapter near you. But if there's not, or if you just want to get started in entrepreneurship, I'm the digital community manager, and the main program that I oversee is called Launch Lab Online, which is our stage 0 to 1 entrepreneur program. What we call it is the idea to first invoice program. And there's also a community of over 2,000 entrepreneurs actually for peer mentorship and peer connection that is part of that program. But we really have programs that are through all stages of an entrepreneurial journey. So we have Bunker Brews, which are networking events essentially that happen monthly at each of our chapters. We have a muster across America, which is 6 regional events that is an annual event to come together as a region for different chapters with national, nationally recognized speakers and people that are there for connection, and our partners are usually present there as well. And then we also have Veterans in Residence as a partnership with WeWork, where you get access to a WeWork all over the nation. And you're actually in a cohort program of other military connected entrepreneurs. We are in, I believe, 19 Bravo, our current cohort. And then we also just have a lot of other programs, Connect, which is a networking event, and then CEO Circle as well. So Bunker Labs is providing resources and pathways for entrepreneurs at all different levels. If you know somebody in the military connected community, pretty much everybody in the United States is military connected in some way, whether it be a grandparent, family member, something like that. I encourage you to come out to one of our events or check us out online. I believe Yanisa is dropping the links in the chat. And also feel free to just reach out to me directly. My email's on this slide. I'm happy to connect you however I can to start your own entrepreneurial journey. So thank you so much, Ben and Frank and Yanisa. I really appreciate having the chance to speak about Bunker Labs today.
Thanks, Liz. We appreciate you sponsoring our event and helping to bring this to your community. I think it's phenomenal that entrepreneurial accelerator programs like this are being applied in the civic and defense sectors to help bring great solutions to government. So kudos to you. We look forward to watching Bunker Labs expand. And okay, that's all for now. Let's get on to the star of our show, Ben McMartin, who's going to get into our programming for today. Ben, take it away.
Frank, thank you so much. And thanks, Liz. We knew right away that Bunker Labs is going to be a great fit for a partner with Public Spend Forum and GovShop and what we're rolling out. And for me, particularly spending most of my career in Army acquisition, I was definitely drawn to bringing Bunker Labs in as a partner with GovShop and Public Spend Forum. So a little bit about my background. I spent 8 years as a PCO, AO, or Procuring Contracting Officer, Agreements Officer, before going over to the Requirements Program Management side and being the Acquisition Manager for a lab, which was at the time U.S. Army TARDEC in Warren, Michigan. But really, my background is in all things weird, which is what Acquisition Innovation Essentials is about today. We can get about as deep as you can get in 40 minutes, and that's what I intend to do, to talk about all the other stuff of how you can go out and procure new technology, and also from the supplier side, understanding where the pipelines begin nowadays, because they don't necessarily begin with an RFP or an industry day. So my apologies to all the government folks on the phone. I know standard government practice is to spend the first 15 minutes telling people to mute for any webinar. Unfortunately, now that I've gone to the industry side, stuff tends to work. So apologies that we're missing out on that portion of the training. The standard approach is where I want to begin for a shift in how governments buy technology. So in the federal context, in buying technology, the standard approach is this approach that we see on the left-hand side here, which is really governed by the Federal Acquisition Regulation and its supplements. And that approach looks like a requirement is developed, which is a solution that the government develops over a process that it does mainly organically internally. That requirement is then researched, and that research looks a little different than market research that you think you're looking for. That market research is really who can develop and deliver and at what price the requirement that I've already determined I need. And then there's a synopsis, 15-day notice that, hey, this procurement is coming up. An RFP or request for proposal is released, and then you're going to have 30, 60 days to propose. And then the government goes into the ritual known as source selection. And this is a lot of mysticism and stuff that's done in rooms with rituals that have been developed over the decades. And hopefully this process takes less than 2 years, but not always. And then you end up with an award. And the standard procurement approach is really built for an era where the government was the funder of research and development. So this process was a great process when the government was the one who was actually going to do all of that basic and applied research. It was an organic research. All the funding in R&D was coming from the government, and the government could do the research, figure out what it needed to buy, and then go out and buy it in this process. But as we know, those days are long gone. 3 years ago when I was giving a similar webinar to this, the government was being outfunded in research and development 3-to-1 with private industry. That's probably closer to 4-to-1 today. So when we think about that, when industry is 4 times the funding level of government and R&D, this process is not necessarily the best process, especially when you're trying to get the latest and greatest technology into the chain. So that brings us to today's lesson, which is this big mess that I just put on your screen, which is called the acquisition innovation approach. And the acquisition innovation approach is different than the standard approach in that you can see that we start with define the problem. So similar to requirements development, define the problem, however, is about industry and academia and government collaborating to determine what the problem is they're trying to solve prior to going out for a solution. As a result, the market research is completely different. The market research is no longer who can make it for me, how much is it going to cost, and when am I going to get it? The market research now is, what are some solutions to the problem? Am I even defining the problem correctly? What technologies are available? What technologies could be available if the government invested some money in further development? And then publication is completely different. When the government was the money pot for R&D, it was easy to publicize. The publication went out on FedBizOpps, or what is now beta.san.gov, and it was up to industry to come to the government and find that solicitation if they wanted that money for investment. The reality today is the government needs to get its problem sets out to industry, and publication has to be completely different. Industry is the one investing in developing technology, and government wants to get access to it. So the way that government publicizes and solicits for technology is different. And then you can see that negotiation is way the heck down here at the bottom in acquisition innovation. In the standard approach, that negotiation is really in the requirements development, where the government's going to decide what it is it's going to buy at the beginning, and then it's going to go through a little negotiation during that source selection. But the reality is, in the acquisition of innovation approach, negotiation could be the scope. You could be negotiating what the scope of the actual project is way at the end. And then we have award, just like we have in standard approach. But in the acquisition and innovation approach, as we're going to discuss, there's communications going on along the whole chain here, from define the problem all the way through award. We're talking with industry and refining in an agile process. In the standard approach, that's not how it works. Requirement is developed, a little market research is done unilaterally by the government, and then it's out for proposal, and then wait for the government to decide. And so on the acquisition or innovation approach, in addition to FAR, don't forget that federal acquisition regulation contracts, procurement contracts are still used, but we also have all of these new authorities or old authorities used in new ways. So when it comes to market research, I spoke about that in 2 contexts. The first context I talked about was where the government spends all the money, and it's up to industry to come find what the government wants in order to get dollars for research. And in that context, it was a great idea to just have this passive market research. Government puts out a market survey or a request for information and just lets it sit on SAM. And industry, needing that money for investment, will obviously come to the government and find those opportunities and then reply to those market surveys. In reality, in today's environment, with the speed of technology development and where the investment dollars are, the government cannot simply put out a request for information and sit and wait. It must go out and get that information. So while you'll still see market surveys and RFIs, what you're going to see nowadays is, especially in the area of emerging technologies, is you're going to see those combined with other techniques such as crowdsourcing, use of partner intermediaries, prize challenges, hackathons, and some of the other stuff that we're going to talk about today. You'll notice that I have GovShop identified in here because a lot of these outreach activities aren't required by federal acquisition regulation to be put in SAM.gov. The majority are. I would say the majority of them still end up in SAM.gov. But in GovShop, we're really concentrating on these type of opportunities for emerging technologies. And so we try to capture all of them off of multiple sites in our opportunities section. So let's talk about crowdsourcing. Who the heck's out there crowdsourcing? I can tell you not very many people. This statute has been around for a while, and it's a great tool for governments to use and for vendors to check in on. The site that you would check at is citizenscience.gov, which is really a database of different citizen science and crowdsourcing activities that the government is conducting right now. This is a great opportunity for the government to go out and define and refine the problem set. Get input from real data sets and get crowdsourced solutions so that you can identify what it is you're eventually going to buy based on who is out there doing what. And there's really no limit to what can be used on this citizen science. And I'm going to show you some examples in a second, but this is a fantastic site to use. It's managed by GSA, but all government agencies have it available to use. And you can see some of the stuff you can do on there. Creating and refining project designs, collecting and analyzing data, making discoveries, solving problems. So here's a sample just from today, and I'll tell you what my search methodology was. I went to citizenscience.gov and I just searched by active projects that are in the technology sphere. So currently there's over 400 current projects out there that you can look at, but my selection criteria was to go down into the technology area, which we're kind of focusing on today. And you can see some examples right here. Anything from stormwater management, fire monitoring. We also had mudslides that came up on there. And then it's not just your Forestry Service or your National Park Service that are using this. You can find almost every agency is on there right now, including DOD, DOE, DHS. They're all on there right now. They've got some really cool stuff. Shout out to my friends from the Army who are doing technology wargaming and something that I call Mowgli. And that is not Mowgli from the Jungle Book. That is massive multiplayer online wargame leveraging the internet. So these are opportunities. If you're a vendor and you want to know where the very beginning of a pipeline starts for new technology, make your way on over to citizenscience.gov. If you're a government person and you've never thought of using this as a tool, why don't you give it a try? A second hot topic when it comes to developing requirements and problem set refining is really about partner intermediary agreements. And so these are really hot lately. I got to be honest, DOD is a little late to the game, even though they have the biggest, flashiest partner intermediary agreements out there that you're familiar with. The reality is the civilian services have been using partner intermediary agreements for a lot longer than DOD's recent use. However, these are fantastic tools to support your tech transfer program. So a partner intermediary agreement at its base is an agreement between government and some intermediary organization to support their tech transfer program. And you can see this type of services that can be done under here. Innovation hubs, prize challenges, running your STEM program, also doing an accelerator incubator. These are really popular uses for these PIAs currently. So let's talk about a couple examples of PIAs. So first one I gotta address is TechLink. TechLink is probably the biggest one. They are a partner intermediary to DOD and the VA. And they really capture all of that technology that's being created in the labs and offering that up for licensing. So if you're a vendor out there, entrepreneur, and you think you've got a great application or a solution, you can think about licensing some government technology and inserting a different application back into the chain. POs are an outstanding way to get access to not just IP and licensed technology from the government, but access to lab facilities. That's all available, and I would encourage anyone to just go to the TechLink's site and see what they offer. And then the second one I want to bring to everyone's attention is DefenseWorks. So when you talk about, big and grabbing headlines, DefenseWorks and a good friend of mine down at Special Operations Command, who has since retired, but who managed SoftWorks, which is the second one you see on there on the right side from the government side. They have done some fantastic things with partner intermediary agreements for the operator community and for actually bigger groups. So let's talk about MGM Works over there. MGM Works is one of my favorite partner intermediary relationships. This is an intermediary agreement between DefenseWorks and Air University down in Montgomery, Alabama. And they do a fantastic job with bridging the gap between Air University and actually the local Montgomery school district and community, which has really bolstered their STEM program and their outreach for the students at the War College and within the community. So there's all sorts of stuff you can do with partner intermediary agreements. Of course, I'm sure everyone is familiar if you've been tracking DoD with pitch days and hackathons and Shark Tanks and design sprints and plugins and all the other type of things that are happening in these spaces. Definitely, if you're anywhere near them and these are one of your customers, your perceived customers, you'll want to stop by. All right, so let's talk about publication and solicitation. So once you've refined your problem set from the government side and you've worked with industry partners to get an idea of what you think the potential solutions are, or at least what your problem is, then it's time to go out and let the world know you have a problem and start soliciting for some solutions. So in the traditional acquisition process, once you got here and you had a requirement, you would do a synopsis, 15 days through sam.gov. Then you do an RFP or an RFQ, 30 days, 60 days on the street. Maybe you would do an industry day or a draft. But at the end of the day, these were your processes to do through FedBizOps and now beta.sam.gov. In acquisition of innovation, there's a whole different world of how to go about letting people know what you're doing and where it's going to be. So in addition to, I'm still going to have something that operates as a synopsis, right? Hey, heads up, I may be having something coming forward that I'm looking for solutions. You're still going to have RFQs and RFPs on the contract side. But there's a whole nother world of publication opportunities and solicitation methods between broad agency announcements, a commercial solutions opening, and the stuff we talked about earlier when the government's doing it directly, prize contest, hackathon, Shark Tank, pitch event. And so again, these are what we capture in our opportunities page on GovShop for those people that are looking to provide emerging technology solutions. All right, so prize challenges. I'm shocked everywhere I go and I talk about prize challenges because they are not used that much. And even if you go to the page today, you should expect to see a couple thousand prize challenges, and they're not as many as you would think. And so 3 years ago, when we were talking about prize challenges, there were very few. They are coming around. People are using them more because they're starting to learn how to use them. And if you're a supplier, this is a whole nother land of opportunity for you to provide technology solutions to the government. So you can't just be on beta.sam.gov. You can't just be on GovShop. You want to check out challenge.gov. Oh, by the way, yes, we keep challenge.gov and GovShop too. But make your way to challenge.gov and check out the cool stuff that you can compete on there. Now remember, these are prize challenges. You get cash money for solving a problem. It's not entering into a development agreement. And look at the cool stuff that has been done on prize challenges. Lindbergh's transatlantic flight Designs for the U.S. Capitol and White House. I mean, those are pretty cool prize challenges. Robots that can set up life support on Mars. These are cool things that if you have the opportunity to be involved in, this is how you develop your own requirement for yourself to these prize challenges. So here's a sample just from today. I took this screenshot just today, and I took a sampling of some ones that look cool to me. All of these are still open, by the way. So if you're listening to this webinar today and you think that you have a solution for one of these, pop over to challenge.gov and check out the submission requirements on them. But hey, the Marine Corps is looking for ground sensors. They're doing a ground sensor challenge. U.S. Department of Energy doing taking energy action into manufacturing. I'm from Michigan. Manufacturing's huge there. I'm going to check that one out.
Hey, Ben, this is Frank. A quick question on the challenges, and maybe some of these others as well. Do you have to have any special type of authority, from your agency to use challenge-based competition, or is that really just going to be varying agency to agency?
So the general prize challenge competition is found in Part 15, and it is open to all the federal agencies. DoD actually went and created its own, which you can see down here in the left-hand corner, 10 USC 2374A. DoD created its own prize challenge authority, which you can also leverage if you're DoD. I will tell you that most DoD people are still using the Part 15 authority because it's older, it's more tested, it's broader. You do need to get delegation of authority down from your head of contracting authority, whatever agency you are, so that you can use that statute. But you will find that that's an easy one to get. Most people are open to delegating that prize challenge. Easier than a couple of the authorities we'll talk about later. All right, so let's talk about big solicitation methods, open call solicitation methods, and yeah, we're bringing the prize challenges back. So in the traditional context, when you get to solicitation, life is easy. You have RFQs for under the SAT, and you have RFPs for over the SAT. Well, life is easy. You have two things to use. In reality, in the world of technology, even FAR-based technology, procurement, you have other solicitation methods available to you. And so broad agency announcement is actually a Federal Acquisition Regulation Part 35 solicitation tool, and one that is very useful, and I recommend people invest in putting out a BAA. And then you have prize challenges, like we said, are under two different statutory authorities. And then we have a couple things on the left-hand side here that are really in flux. So one is the commercial solutions opening. And the real easiest way to explain what a commercial solutions opening is to start with broad agency announcement. So broad agency announcement is a broad solicitation that's put out usually annually. And it identifies areas of research that an agency is looking for solutions in for the whole year. And there is a limit to what type of research can be done. And the answer is basic, applied, and advanced research. So it's low-level research that can be done. And usually these are put out annually. There are some that are put out on a certain cycle, Rapid Innovation Fund, broad agency announcement, or some other agencies that have put them out on a more rapid cycle. But the reality is the agency announcement tells you what the rules is to submit your solution. It tells you what the evaluation criteria are to be selected for funding. And they're just an open call that's there the whole year. The commercial solutions opening is the same thing. At least it is when you're in the other transaction authority context. And what I mean by that is the commercial solutions opening is just that broad open call for certain technologies that an agency needs, except it's for later technologies. And what I mean by later technologies is prototyping and commercial modified solutions. So you're beyond that basic, applied, and advanced research. And so this really was championed by DIUX, which is why I've got their logo up there, and my friends at ACC New Jersey, superstars out there, who came up with the commercial solutions opening. In its purest context, the commercial solutions opening is really a solicitation method to go into OTA. However, it has been adopted by the civilian agencies in different versions. They have their own rules and policies around it. So you don't want to go to DIUX and read their commercial solutions opening guide and think that you're ready to go for GSA. They are different. But I would refer anybody to head over to the DIU, Defense Innovation Unit website. Yeah, they dropped the X. And check out their commercial solutions opening guide that's available there. And then the annual plan call for white paper. This is really something that you see in the context of other transaction authorities and DoD in something called the consortium model. And so what an annual plan call for white paper is, it's really a broad agency announcement or a commercial solutions opening type call where at the beginning of the year or in some cycle, there will be an annual call for solutions within the consortium, and awards will then be awarded under an other transaction agreement under the consortium. So it operates the same way as a broad agency announcement or a commercial solutions opening. The type of technology depends on what type of OTA it is. So if it's a research OTA, then your annual call will be about basic, applied, and advanced. And if it's a prototype OTA, then your annual call will be about prototyping and later technology. I would like to just point out right here that the other transactions guide, which we're going to jump into OTAs here in 1 second, the other transactions guide says agencies that intend to award only OTs from a solicitation can create their own process. That means they can create any solicitation method that they want, provided that they've identified that they're going to go into an OTA. That's a DoD guide, so that does not apply to the other agencies, and I'm going to pick up on that in a bit. And of course, I got GovShop down here again. Why? Because we are capturing all these type of alternative solicitation methods on our opportunities page. All right, so let's talk OTAs. There's a lot of chatter about OTAs. OTAs get a lot of press nowadays. And unfortunately, most of the OTA information you'll get is very basic and regurgitates what the statute tells you. I will try to go a little deeper that in the 20 or so minutes we have left. But when I speak about DODs, and we're going to use DOD as the OTA example here, we're going to talk about 3 different statutes which really give power to what could be another transaction agreement. And these are DoD specific. So the other agencies that have, the 10 other agencies that have OTA authority have different statutes and different guidance and different policies, and they don't get a lot of attention. Public Spend Forum is currently in process of publishing a other transactions guide for the other guys. And look for that here in the next coming months. But when we talk about DoD, they're doing the biggest volume, so they're the best example to walk through. So the first authority I really want to walk through is 2371, 10 U.S.C. 2371, which is the Research Other Transaction Authority for DoD. Now you'll notice that I've got it twice on here. I've got Technology Investment Agreement with the exact same statute above it, and there's a reason for that. So when it comes to research OTs, you go to the statute and that's really all you have. There's no regulation. There is a DoD guide that speaks to research. However, it is more heavily on the prototype side. But for research OTs, the rules are very simple. The research OTs are set out for basic, applied, and advanced research. There's a 50-50 cost share requirement to the extent practicable. Notice that is not to the maximum extent practicable. In my experience, very little cost sharing is done in the research OT arena because it's simply not practicable. And then these are to be used when contract, grant, or cooperative agreement are not feasible or appropriate. That is a statement that the government needs to justify prior to entering into one of these. And they have custom IP negotiated at arm's length. And of course, no FAR, DFAR, or Dodgers applies. So let me speak to Dodgers really quick. So Department of Defense grants and agreements regulations apply to what are known as technology investment agreements, which fall under the same statute. So the real difference here between the side by side is that research OTs have custom IP negotiated at arm's length. Technology investment agreements have standard IP and BIDOL provisions per the actual regulation, Dodgers. That's really the only difference between these two right here. If you do a technology investment agreement, that body of regulations, Dodgers, does apply. And you will need to know how to work in Dodgers. It's a totally new regulation. All right, let's talk about 2373s real quick. If you're not familiar and you work in DoD, or you're not familiar and you work on a civilian agency, let me tell you that this is an amazing statute that's been around a long, long time and does not get nearly the use it should. 2373 is purchase for experimentation. It falls under the OTA chart here in this part of our lesson because it can result in other transaction agreements. It can also result in contracts or purchase orders. So the key piece here for 2373 is it's only a 2-paragraph statute. It does not have a regulation. It does not have a guidebook. It does not have policy. So what you need to know about 2373 is that it's for purchase of ordnance, signal, chemical activity, and the rest of the stuff in that list. And you can only purchase quantities to the limit that you need to run an experiment with it. This is not a way to go and buy a bunch of spares or services. This statute is specifically to buy items so that you can do testing or experimentation on them. But don't think of it that narrowly. The Air Force just recently spent nearly $100 million buying cloud services to test under this statute. A key piece here is that there is no competition requirement under 2373 whatsoever. However, some agencies have implemented their own competition policy to compete requirements for this statute. The best use of this statute, honestly, is foreign comparative testing. And so for those agencies who want to buy things overseas, have them come back here and test them, this is really a fantastic statute that's available, that you can buy things on the spot if you can justify experimentation. And so let's finish up with the big prototype OT statute. This is where all the dollars are. This is where all the articles are. Everything you're reading about OTs, when people say OTs, this is what they really mean. Department of Defense prototype OTs under 2371B. So 2371B came into existence in 2016. Prior to that, there was prototyping authority under 2371 as a note to 2371, note 845. But in 2016, prototype OTs for DoD got its own statute, and this is where all the big dollars are going that you're hearing about. So when I think of prototype authority, I've got a little trick to make it super simple to understand what it is and how you can use it. There's really only 3 requirements to use prototype OT for DoD, and number 1 is purpose. Super simple. The purpose is statutory. Congress tells us what the purpose is. The purpose of the resulting agreement must be directly relevant to enhancing mission effectiveness, and then we have a whole list of stuff, or to improvement of, and then we have a whole list of stuff. And what I want to call to your attention here is, after enhancing and improving, it basically lists out everything that DoD does in a mission set. So really, on purpose, it's nearly impossible to fall outside of purpose. I have yet to see somebody fall outside of purpose as long as they're buying in DoD within their mission set. So really, everything should be included that DoD buys. The second piece I want you to note is there's no percentage next to enhancing. There's no quantitative measure next to improvement. This is just some enhancement or some improvement. All right, so the second P is prototype. Well, that makes sense. It's a prototype OT authority. You probably have to have a prototype. Well, for prototype, Congress does not provide a definition within the statute. So for the prototype definition, you need to go to the DoD guide, which comes from the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment. It was published in November of 2018. Also, after this, we will publish a link to that so everyone can get their copy of the DoD OT guide. But you can also go to the Defense Acquisition University website where they keep on there the virtual version of the guide. But the guide has the actual definition of prototype. You will not find it in the statute. So the guide provides this definition, a proof of concept, model, reverse engineering, and so on. The pieces that I want to call to your attention on prototype are that last sentence, a process, including a business process, may be the subject of a prototype project. I would also like to call to your attention concept, creation, design, development. The reason I call these to your attention is because look at the the technical readiness levels that we're talking about here. We have things that look more like advanced research. We have things that look more like commercial modified solutions. So really when it comes to the prototype definition for the statute here, coming from the guide, it is a very wide range. You should not come to prototype OTs with a preconceived notion of what prototype means. You know, it's not these pictures of this smartphone that I've copied in here. It can be an idea, it can be a concept, it can be something as a commercial modified application or a new business process. So this is a very, very wide definition of prototype. And then the final piece is participation. So participation, we go back to the statute. So if I'm looking at this whole chart as a whole, I've got statute for purpose, I've got guide, prototype, I'm back to statute for participation. And for participation, the statute lets us know that we have to meet one of four things in order to enter into an agreement. I only have two of them here because these two cover 99% of the agreements out there. And so there is at least one non-traditional defense contractor or nonprofit research participating to a significant extent. And B is there's a third cost share where you don't meet A. So the purpose of bringing this out is there is a 1/3 cost share for prototype OTs if you are a defense contractor, a traditional defense contractor, unless you have a non-traditional defense contractor on your team and they are participating to a significant extent. There are two other exceptions. I won't get to those today, but I do want to cover what the heck we mean by non-traditional defense contractor. So again, we're back to Congress here. Congress gives us the actual definition by statute, and it is one of the most confusing definitions that could be created. But the basic gist of it is if your company was subject to full CAS accounting in the previous accounting period, then you are a traditional defense contractor. Everyone else is a non-traditional defense contractor. And so how do I know if I'm a non-traditional defense contractor? Well, if you're a small business, you're a non-traditional defense contractor. If all you perform is commercial contracts, you're a non-traditional. If you only perform fixed price with adequate price competition, or if you've done less than $50 million in CAS coverage during the previous accounting period, you are a non-traditional defense contractor. I always get the question from my folks my small businesses that do the Defense Small Business Innovative Research or SITRs, and they say, yeah, Ben, I get it, but my entire business model is defense. I've never done anything but a defense contract with my company. I have no commercial business. If you're a small business, you are a non-traditional defense contractor. The definition is built on CAS coverage, full CAS coverage, and you are exempt to that, so you'll never meet it. That's good news for you. If you are non-traditional in the OTA context, you need to go tell everybody. I'd put a little stamp on your website and say, I'm a non-traditional defense contractor. So OTAs have a big boom. And why do we care about OTAs having a big boom? Because they have this thing called sole source follow-on production, which means we can go right into production off a successful prototype. A key piece to note from the guide here is the guide actually institutes a requirement in addition to the statute that DoD activities notify folks ahead of time, hey, I think this thing might go into production. Here's the basic scope of what that is. Here's some best practices for government. Make sure you're letting industry know what you think that production is to the best of your ability so they can make a bid, no bid decision at that prototyping phase. And please do not ask them to provide unit pricing on a production run of a prototype that hasn't been built yet. I wish I had $1 for every solicitation that I've seen this in. If they can tell, if industry can tell you what it's going to cost in 4 years to produce something they haven't prototyped yet, they probably aren't prototyping it. And then for industry, you got to make that bid, no bid decision on the prototype if you want to get into the production game, if the government's giving you that notice. So keep an eye on what they're looking to produce. And the other thing you got to understand is the government is making these decisions year in advance to give the notice. So the number of units they think they're going to produce or the cost, you're probably not going to see that in solicitations because they don't know yet. So they're just going to give you a basic idea of what they think the production will be. And so to wrap it all up here as we're getting to the end, here's why it all matters. Acquisition innovation can take you all the way from working with industry and between industry and government on an idea through like a challenge or a hackathon. It can bring you into actually having the government buy your products and experiment on them and start to set their requirements. You can go right into prototype OTAs and have a competition to prototype some kind of technology, and that can roll straight into sole source follow-on production. That's all the way from I have an idea to it is fielded in 1,000 units without ever touching a FAR contract, without ever seeing an RFP. All right. So what's important for folks to understand here is if you're on the industry side and you're in emerging technologies, the pipeline starts at a different location and you need to be involved at the low level problem curation with the groups doing that. And if you're the government, here's an opportunity for you to avoid a lot of time and pain in multiple procurements if you can really map out a long chain and how you're going to use all these different authorities and tools to get a solution for your customer. All right, OTA consortia, everybody wants to know about it and who they are. Public Spend Forum has pulled it together. I can tell you this chart is out of date. It's out of date every day I make it. But we're doing our best to stay up to date on it. There is a 8th management firm out there in another OTA agreement. This is always available through Public Spend Forum. We're keeping it updated nonstop and working with the consortium management firms to make sure that we have their capabilities and their services mapped out so that folks can join the right consortium and government folks can find an instrument to buy their technology before they create another consortium, which has been an issue at the DoD level for several years now, and it's starting to slow down. But if you're looking for which consortium is right to me and how do I get involved, just reach out to us at Public Spend Forum and we can help you out with that. And then the last piece for me is all about drafting and negotiation. So from the government side and from the industry side, when it comes to OTAs and a lot of these hackathons or prize challenges, they're going to have special rules. And when you enter into an agreement, almost everything's going to be negotiable. But that's great if you know how to negotiate. So for the government folks, this is going to take a lot of research and understanding where your risk is and what your objective is so that you can negotiate all these terms. It's not just going to be a clause guide where you click the buttons and it drops those clauses in. You got to negotiate those terms. On the industry side, it's the same thing. Everything's negotiable, but that can be overwhelming. When you come into the government, they're going to have a standard opening that they're going to want to put in place based on efficiency and lessons learned. You got to come just as sophisticated to that table and be ready to negotiate these terms. And there's important stuff in here, whether it's audit, whether it's accounting, whether it's intellectual property, whether it's termination and disputes. These are important things that you need to be able to negotiate, and it is a special skill to understand how to negotiate in this context. The good news is that public spend form does offer something we call other transaction authority advanced, which is the 6-hour lock you in a room and just nerd out on other transaction agreements and make you an expert so that you're able, if you're a government participant, to come up with an acquisition strategy, develop a solicitation method, evaluate, negotiate an award, or if you're a provider, to identify opportunities, create proposals, get selected, then get in negotiations and get those terms that you need that are beneficial to both you and your government customer. And guess what? At some point, you got to actually perform and then go into administration and close out on these agreements. Those are all things we cover in other transaction authority advanced, which, like I said, is not for the faint of heart. This is for whole teams, 6 hours locked in a room, just nerding out in the weeds on OTAs. We have some other service offerings, but I think I've talked everyone to death. So to close this out, I'm going to pass it back to Frank to let you know about the other offerings we have available.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it. We have had quite a few questions come in, and if it's okay with you, I'd like to ask a few on the air.
Let's do it.
All right. I'll take them in the order that they came. Our first is from Christopher, and Christopher asks, is it fair to say most crowdsourced projects are data science focused?
I would say most are. However, the question is, what do you do with the result of that? And I have seen most be data science. What it's really interesting is what's done with the data, right? So currently there are multiple agencies, and make sure you hop over to citizenscience.gov. There are multiple agencies that are crowdsourcing data to make regulatory and policy decisions related to procurement, of all things. So these are definitely tools to go out from one side and get data to support your decision, whether it's you're an agency looking to make new regulation policy or craft an agreement. I will tell you that the DoD has been very specific on not so much data, but ideas. So the DoD has used it for crowdsourcing multiple potential solutions and then bringing that in-house to consider.
Fantastic. All right. Question number 2 from Brandon. Will, and this is going to be a hot topic, I imagine, will the CMMC, and that's an acronym that I am familiar with, but I'll have you define, will the CMMC apply to OTAs?
This is such a great question, and I want to break something while I answer it. So cybersecurity maturity model certification, it will apply to OTAs. Is that terrible or what? And I'll tell you why I'm so bummed out about this question, because I spent the last 4 years of my career before leaving Army acquisition really working as hard as I could to lower the barrier of entry for companies so that they could bring that great technology to DoD. And to do that, we use OTAs, and we had special IP and special accounting and audit, and we created all these great ways to lower the barrier and have that conversation. CMMC is going to be a burden. It is going to be applied to OTs. And I don't disagree with the reason. The reason is logical. Things that apply to data, for example, ITAR, the Trade and Agreements Regulations, ITAR applies to the data. So yes, if there's that type of data in your OT, guess what? ITAR applies. Fiscal law applies to the money. So guess what? When you're spending money in your OT, fiscal law applies. So CMMC is going to apply the exact same way, which is it applies to the provider in their ability to hold controlled unclassified information. I was very disappointed to hear, at least it was published in a recent article, that DoD would start with OTs, of all terrible places to start. CMMC. I hope that's not the case because we've spent so much time working with industry to lower the barriers. I don't know why we would start there, but yes, the short answer is yes, CMMC will apply to every company and it doesn't matter what the contracting mechanism is.
All right. We have another question from Brandon, and it's about traditional versus non-traditional companies in the eyes of the OT. So say you're an 8A company or an Alaska Native corporation, and you have contracts that happen to have cost accounting standards in them, but you all know, and we know that if you're an 8A or A and C, you're exempt from CAS. Would you still be considered a traditional government contractor or traditional defense contractor, I guess?
All that matters for the purposes of, first of all, socioeconomic programs don't apply at all in the OTA context, which actually was a recent question I saw through NCMA's Collaborate yesterday. So maybe we're answering a question for someone at the same time. But socioeconomic classifications of programs have no application in OTA. It's not a set-aside program. It only contains what the statute contains. So the key is all you need to concentrate on is, were you subject to full CAS accounting last year? That's all you have to answer. If the answer is, I was subject to full cost accounting in the last accounting period, you are a traditional. Everyone else is a non-traditional.
Terrific. Final question from Glenn is, I think Glenn has great scientists in the aerospace field, but they struggle to write proposals to get government contracting. Any ideas on how to fill this gap? Sounds like Glenn might be working for a vendor. So how can they write better proposals? Or maybe what are some of the innovative techniques that Glenn should pay specific attention to that you've described today?
When it comes to writing better proposals, step one is I would go to our webinar on winning government contracts, where we really talk on a general level about that proposal development and how to get in the pipeline. And also our workshop where we go super deep on winning government contracts, where we actually walk through each section of what a requirement looks like and how you write to each section. But I will give you my ex-contracting officer's general opinion. The solicitation, whether it's OTA or whether it's prize challenge or whether it's FAR contract, the solicitation is written as a process document. There are criteria that if you screw up, you're going to be out. There's criteria where it explains exactly what the government's going to look for and what you're not going to get bonus credit for. And I spent too many years seeing contractors of all shapes and sizes try to feed me awesome stuff that they thought would be important to me, and then at the same time miss out on what was said in the solicitation. All that matters is what's in the solicitation, and that really doesn't change whether it's FAR contract, RFP, OTA, RIF BAA, prize challenge, pitch day criteria, whatever. So you need to come up with a compliance checklist. Step one, make sure you're perfect on that solicitation compliance. And then step two, you should be writing directly to the criteria and nothing else.
Excellent. That's all the questions that we had for today. So I'm going to sign us off with just a little bit more discussion of what we're doing in next week's webinar on how to win government contracts. This is an introduction to our full day workshop, which we're hosting in downtown Washington, D.C. on March 17th. But if you're interested in winning government contracts, if you want to close more deals, start by joining our webinar next Wednesday, the 19th. Yanisa has put a link to register. It is a free webinar. She's put a link to register in the chat. So come join us next week. We're giving away 5 free scholarships to this course, thanks to Public Spend Forum. There's a link to register. There's a link to earn and apply for one of those scholarships in the chat as well. All of the information, all of the links, all of the events that we've discussed today will be included in our post-event recap email, which should be coming out, if not later today, then early tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. We want to thank everyone for joining us today. It's been a terrific session. Thanks once again to Liz Marion and Bunker Labs for sponsoring the session today. It is right at 3 o'clock. We want to be respectful for your time. We're going to go ahead and sign off and say, see you next time. And look out for more information on that Acquisition Innovation Essentials workshop. That is the full day immersion. I know a lot of you are interested in that. So that's going to be on the way. All right. Thanks again. Everyone have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.